Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. I'm Sivan Raviv coming to you live from Israel with all of the top headlines coming out of this region. It's currently 7 a.m. in New York and 2 p.m. here in Israel. Here are the latest developments. U.S. strikes on Iran have paused since Friday, creating a temporary halt in the conflict. Iran said no new attacks were recorded, though tensions remain high. The pause comes as President Donald Trump is reportedly considering whether to escalate the campaign against Iran following a meeting with top national security advisors. Analysts say the break could reflect operational planning or an effort to give diplomatic channels more time rather than a decision to end the campaign. The U.S. blockade of Iranian ports remains in place. This morning, the U.S. military redirected 12 commercial vessels trying to run its renewed blockade of Iranian ports. CENTCOM said 2 ships that didn't comply with its orders were disabled, while 2 others were boarded to ensure total compliance. The Strait of Hormuz remains a major flashpoint, with both sides continuing to seek control of the strategic waterway, keeping global energy markets on edge. With President Trump still reviewing options for possible escalation, the situation remains highly fluid, and officials caution that U.S. military action could resume with little warning. Here's Trump on this.
Well, I think there's a lot of them. There's a military exit where we just keep going just the way we are, and we can even make it a heavier dose, and it's knocking out everything they have. Or there's a smarter strategy, and that's you make a deal, and they want to make a deal. I just don't think they're ready yet, but they do want to make a deal. Sometimes they don't want to say they want to make a deal. They want to be the tough guys, but they do want to make a deal. There's 2 ways. I mean, it's you can just keep doing exactly what we're doing and take them apart piece by piece. We can do it in a more rapid fashion, which we might do, or we can negotiate with them, which we're also doing right now. I mean, as we speak, we're talking to them.
Meanwhile, armed conflict is continuing in the Red Sea. Saudi-led forces say they struck Houthi targets in Yemen, while the Iran-backed Houthis claimed missile and drone attacks on Saudi energy facilities. An Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will travel to Washington tomorrow for a high-stakes meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. Netanyahu is expected to meet Trump at the White House on Tuesday in their first face-to-face talks since the Iran war began. According to reports, the Prime Minister will present new Israeli intelligence on Iran's nuclear and military recovery efforts, including what Jerusalem believes are accelerated moves toward a nuclear weapons capability. Ahead of the trip, a senior Israeli official is quoted as saying the chances of a U.S.-Iran agreement are virtually non-existent, making a future escalation appear increasingly likely. Analysts say the fact that the visit is going ahead may suggest no imminent U.S. military action is expected. At the same time, they note that both Israel and the U.S. have used strategic deception before major operations, meaning the trip does not necessarily rule out a quick return to fighting. In addition to Iran, the White House talks are expected to cover regional security, next steps in the U.S.-brokered ceasefires in Gaza and Lebanon, and the U.S.-Israel strategic partnerships. President Trump has softened some of Israel's concerns over the new U.S.-Saudi civilian nuclear agreement by saying it will only take effect if Riyadh normalizes relations with Israel. But the deal continues to raise questions in Jerusalem. The agreement would allow Saudi Arabia to develop a civilian nuclear program, including uranium enrichment on Saudi soil, something Israel has long viewed as a potential proliferation risk. Analysts say the normalization requirement preserves a major incentive for Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords, but also highlights that Washington is making major regional decisions with limited Israeli input, even on issues with long-term strategic implications. Here's what Trump had to say about this.
It's a two-way street, and we think it's very important for the future of the Middle East. The Abraham Accords have been incredibly successful for the countries, as you know, for the countries in them. And I think it's very important. So, at some point they'll join and they'll do their civil, that's why I call it civil nuclear, but that's what it is. No enrichment, it's civil nuclear. Well, we didn't talk about it, but it was always understood, and Chris knew, and Saudi Arabia knew, that if they didn't join the Abraham Accords, the deal's not, I'm not going to do the deal.
So then why did you sign it?
Senator John...
Because they understood that in order, subject to Congress and everything else, in order for that deal to go through, they had to sign into the Abraham Accords.
And so as tensions with Iran remain high, Prime Minister Netanyahu heads to Washington for high-stakes talks with President Trump this week, while a new U.S.-Saudi nuclear deal is raising concerns in Jerusalem. We are now joined by political consultant Ahmed Kuzai, who is based in Bahrain. Hi, Ahmed. Thank you for joining. Ahmed, let's start with Iran. U.S. strikes have paused, but the blockade remains and tensions are still high. Trump was reportedly expected to attack this weekend and then didn't. How do you read this situation? Is this just a pause before the next phase?
It's another pause. I mean, if we look at it, the actual war did not stop since last year's 12-day war. There were multiple pauses, but let's put it that way. The war will never end, even with multiple pauses like the one we have on our hands right now, unless Iran agrees to let Israel be. That's number one. Number two, to let down their guards when it comes to the proxies. And here I'm talking about Hezbollah, about the Houthis, and the rest of the proxies around the region. They have to stop threatening the rest of the world and taking the world a hostage through the blockade of the Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb. And last but not least, and the most important thing for us here in the Gulf, is a non-aggression pact when it comes to border disputes, as well as attacking the Gulf states.
What does this pause tell us about U.S. strategy? Is Trump leaning toward diplomacy, do you think, or preparing a more significant escalation? Because we see this dance of back and forth with Trump over the last few weeks and even months.
I think it is the latter option. With Iran, nobody can strike a deal. We can go back to 50 years and even beyond that. Let's talk about the Algiers agreement. Let's talk about the Iraqi-Iranian war. Let's talk about the oil vessel wars. Iran is all about problems, and here I'm talking about the Iranian regime, of course. Nobody can agree with them. They don't abide by any law. The JCPOA is one of the biggest examples there is. They signed on an enrichment of 3.6%, and they have reached 60%. Who can trust them? No one. And with whatever we're seeing happening around the Middle East today, since the beginning of the war, Iran assaulted 13 sovereign states around the region. Who can trust a regime like that?
Well, here in Israel, they've long warned against partial pressure on Iran. Does a stop-start U.S. campaign, does that risk sending mixed signals to Tehran?
Of course. With the Iranians, I mean, the way they act, the way they think, especially after the demise of the Ayatollah, they became even more like when it comes to aggression, when it comes to assaults. Nobody can stop them right now. Sending these signals, giving them these breathing chances is only wrong. There is no negotiation with such a regime. Since we started the job, we have to finish it fast. Otherwise, multiple heads will grow for the regime.
But we see Iran hasn't responded with new strikes either this weekend. So does that suggest in any way that deterrence is working or not at all?
It's a manipulation tactic by the Iranians. Yes, they didn't do it, but yesterday we started hearing them threatening the United Kingdom. They're even threatening Ukraine, and that's all within the past 24 hours. What kind of peace can be made by people who can never understand what peace is?
Now, where is Israel in all of this? The past 2 weeks, Israel has been on the sidelines. It hasn't attacked. It hasn't been attacked by Iran, while your country has been attacked, which makes me wonder why. Why has Iran attacked everywhere in the Gulf and even Jordan, but not in Israel? What do you think?
I don't think they want Israel involved at this level. Let's put it that way. Me being stationed here in Bahrain, I can tell you there's a big difference between the Iranian assaults and attacks on us. Today, I'm talking about the past 2 weeks compared to the beginning of the war. The amount of rockets and drones is way much less, and that tells us a lot about what's going on, as well as the targets themselves. There's no proper accuracy, and that tells us a lot that whatever happened over the past 1 month at least have changed the way or the behavior of the Iranians, due to, number one, their stockpile of missiles and drones is not the same. Even the type of drones they are firing is not the same. I'm sure it's because the targets lately have attacked their, what can I say? I mean, their factories, their process of manufacturing as much as where they stock them. That left them much weaker. And I think whatever is happening with Israel, and I'm here talking about how we look at it from the Gulf, is that I think they're waiting for the right time because, of course, with Bahrain and Israel, we are the only two countries in the world view Iran the same way, which is a threat to our sovereignty.
Well, turning to the Saudi deal, President Trump says it will only move forward if Saudi Arabia normalizes relations with Israel. How realistic is that at this point, in your opinion? We know that they've always historically conditioned relations with a clear path to a Palestinian state.
I don't think it's that serious because President Trump brought that forward 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. I can't recall properly. But that happens only after something is signed. So now, if we're talking about the nuclear deal between Saudi and the United States, it's a framework, and it will be a deal only after the Congress passes it or does not basically block it. Let's put it that way. The Abraham Accords were not part of the signed document, and that tells us that he's been asking for it nicely, but it's not part of the deal. That being said, the Saudis were clear about when and how will they go forward with the Abraham Accords, and they said that after the Bahrain and Emirates signed the accords alongside the United States and Israel. Once these conditions are met, then I don't think the Saudis will have any other excuse to delay.
Mm-hmm. Now, the bigger issue is uranium enrichment on Saudi soil. From your perspective, how significant is that?
It is, and I understand why the Israelis are so concerned. I mean, they are surrounded with all, let's put it as hostile states, mostly around the Middle East. Everybody has the right to protect their sovereignty, and Israel is no different than that. Whatever is mentioned, especially when it comes to the snap visits, was not mentioned compared to when the negotiations with Emirates were indicated. So Israel is concerned for the right reasons at the moment, but I think with the right pressure on, especially in this visit to the United States, this could be rectified.
Think that this deal could trigger a broader regional nuclear race with other countries seeking similar capabilities?
I don't think it is, but I'm saying that I understand why Israel look at it this way.
Okay. Well, let's move, if I may, to Prime Minister Netanyahu heading to Washington. He says that reports are saying that there is new intelligence on Iran. Could this visit be about coordination ahead of possible military action, or more about trying to prevent a deal that Israel opposes? What do you think?
I think and I hope that it's about recalibrating to finish the job. We can't have a dish half cooked anymore here in the Middle East. I mean, it's hot enough. We've suffered enough wars, enough instability. The whole world economy has been basically troubled with our wars. Enough is enough. The Abraham Accords came at a time for everybody to take a breath, take a step back, and recalibrate things in a different way. We've tried wars all over the years. It didn't work out. It's about time we try peace. We don't need more wars. We don't need the Iranian regime to just basically stop every effort that everybody else is trying to do. Everybody thought a deal with Israel was impossible. Yet everybody proven that everybody is bigger than people see them. And we struck a deal. Yes, it's not perfect. It needed lots of refinement. We need today to work on an Abraham Accords 2.0 because we utilize the time to understand each other, to see how each side works. And now it's time to evolve. It's not time to engage in wars anymore. Enough is enough.
And if the U.S. does pursue a deal with Iran diplomatically, how much influence do you think Israel realistically has over the outcome? It seems Netanyahu is not so in the loop in recent weeks.
Maybe it doesn't seem so, but I think he is. The deal won't be in the favor of the Arabs and the Gulf. It won't be in the favor of the Israelis, not even the Syrians, not the Iraqis, and definitely not the Lebanese. And it will put even more pressure on the Lebanese government. That tells us that we can't leave it this way. We have to finish the job. It's not in my hand, of course, to pressure anybody. It's what I hope for. It's how I see things will turn if the United States of America, without Israel and the Gulf, strikes a deal with Iran. It will leave us basically naked in the middle of the field in front of the Iranians.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ahmed Kuzai, thank you very much for this very valuable input.
Of course, thank you.
And now a word from our partner.
75 years ago, a bold idea helped build a nation. Since then, Israel Bonds has helped power growth, innovation, and resilience across Israel. Generation after generation, investors have turned values into action. Now, it's your turn to be a part of the next chapter. Celebrate 75 years of Israel Bonds. Invest today at israelbonds.com.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, the IDF says it continued targeted operations across the Strip over the weekend, eliminating several senior Hamas operatives and striking terror infrastructure as it accuses the group of rebuilding its military capabilities in violation of the ceasefire. Among those killed was Abu Ghazal, a Hamas Nukhba squad commander who led the October 7th terrorist attack of Kisufim. The IDF also announced the elimination of 2 senior Hamas intelligence and aerial operatives, as well as Abdallah Jaha, a member of Hamas's naval unit, who the military says infiltrated Israel during the October 7th massacre. In addition, the IDF and Shin Bet carried out a wave of airstrikes targeting Hamas weapons depots, an underground facility, and a weapons manufacturing site. The military says the compounds contained assault rifles, RPGs, mortar shells, explosives, and other munitions intended for attacks on IDF forces and Israeli civilians. Secondary explosions after the strikes indicated large stockpiles of weapons. And tensions boiled over across Judea and Samaria amid a weekend of deadly terror, major security operations, and growing concerns over escalating violence. The latest incident occurred near Susia in the South Hebron Hills, where an Israeli farmer who is also an active duty IDF soldier home on leave was attacked while grazing his flock. The Palestinian assailant struck him in the head, stole his personal weapon, and opened fire toward a nearby farm before escaping. The soldier was wounded, and IDF, police, and Shin Bet forces have launched an extensive manhunt for the suspect. The stolen weapon has since been recovered. The attack followed a deadly gun battle near the village of Tel, in which IDF major and civil security officer Benayahu Melet was killed. The IDF says 4 terrorists, including the main gunman, were eliminated. Overnight, Palestinian media reported that suspected Israeli extremists set fire to a mosque in the village of Kusra, south of Nablus, and spray-painted Hebrew graffiti reading Benayahu's revenge, along with a Star of David and other slogans. No injuries were reported. Palestinian sources also said settlers blocked several roads in the area. There has been no official Israeli comment on the incident. Over the weekend, Israeli security forces carried out a sweeping counterterrorism operation across Judea and Samaria. More than 70 wanted Palestinians were arrested, hundreds were questioned, and troops raided hundreds of locations, targeting Hamas operatives, arms traffickers, inciters, and suspects accused of planning terror attacks. The weekend was also marked by retaliatory violence, with groups of Israeli settlers reportedly attacking Palestinian villages following the shooting. The IDF says it is continuing intensive operations to prevent further terror attacks while working to contain the risk of a wider escalation across the territory. And on this topic, joining me now is political analyst Gedalia Bloom. Hi, Gedalia. Thank you for joining.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So now you're on the ground in Judea and Samaria. How would you describe the situation right now?
Confusing. I think right now, what you're seeing actually on the ground manifests itself as actually, a product of indecision and confusion amongst the political echelons here in Israel. They don't know what to do with Judea and Samaria. You see ministers like Bezalel Smotrich investing a significant amount of capital into developing Judea and Samaria for civilian purposes, military purposes. And we're seeing sovereignty from the ground up, not a political sovereignty, but a sovereignty of actualizing the Jewish people's civil rights to be able to live in Judea. And there is a big pushback. There's not full consensus throughout the whole country about what to do with Judea and Samaria. So we're seeing on one side facts on the ground changing for the Jewish people, expanding our footprint, and at the same time, they're not talking 2-state solution, but they're not talking 1-state solution. So we're kind of like in this purgatory. What exactly are we going to do in Judea and Samaria? And I think that the confusion is really going all the way from the political echelon all the way down to the first responders, to the civilians on the ground, and everybody in between.
Now, we've seen a brutal attack near Susia and the killing of an IDF soldier near Tel. Are these isolated incidents, in your opinion, or part of a broader escalation trend that we're now seeing?
No, in fact, I think what we're seeing in Judea and Samaria is exactly what we see in Gaza. We're seeing Hamas, we're seeing Islamic Jihad, we're seeing the Palestinian Authority, who, by the way, is funded by the international community. Just the UK, for instance, every single year transfers 100 million pounds to the Palestinian Authority, and another 10 million pounds just was transferred recently in order to pay salaries. We're seeing a failed government, a failed Palestinian Authority. Pew polls, I think the last polls that were published said that Hamas would actually win an election if they're actually called for an election. So we're seeing the same thing in Gaza, but the only difference we're seeing is that we're not actively fighting a war in Judea and Samaria. We have the IDF soldiers are actually acting more like policemen than soldiers, going on night raids, arrests. And I think that if it wasn't for the brave IDF soldiers who are sacrificing their own lives and their families when everybody knows in Israel that the full-time soldiers are only a very small part of the puzzle. We're talking about significant amount of soldiers who are on reserve duty. They're leaving their family in order to protect the Jewish people. So when we're seeing these quote-unquote isolated incidences, these are just the small numbers that are actually getting past our intelligence agencies, the Mossad, Shabak, the IDF. So if the IDF wasn't active on these raids, we would see this every single day, multiple times a day, and it would be a bloodbath. So I think that when we're talking about security in the region, if it wasn't for the IDF going on these night raids and arresting, as you reported just now, 70 plus in the last 24 hours, things would be very, very different.
So we are seeing the IDF has launched large-scale counter-terror operations, just as you say, arresting dozens. Is that enough to contain the threat, or are we seeing something deeper that requires a much larger response?
Yeah, I mean, we're like pretty much, I mean, first and foremost, I know you just reported 70, which is, I think, a lot in comparison, but every night the IDF goes out and arrests terrorists, confiscate weapons. It just doesn't make the news at all. And maybe it's just not interesting, I think, to a lot of people. But it's very interesting to the people who live on the ground, knowing that a weapon was confiscated that could have been used to shoot up a hitchhiking post with teenagers. I mean, this is a very serious situation. So I don't think it's more like an escalation that happened now. I think that I think the army is realizing that this status quo of this tit for tat is not sustainable. And I think that, again, at the end of the day, it's up to the political echelon to make a national decision. What exactly are we going to do with Judea and Samaria? And we need to go full in. Obviously, my perspective would be to call for a one-state solution. We have 20% Arab Israelis, citizens, who are living in peace and in cooperation with us together as one country. And I think that there is a possibility for the Palestinians to move in that direction. I think it's going to take a very long time, but I do think that sovereignty, one state solution with a pathway to citizenship for all Palestinians should be something that should be on as a national interest, because the alternative is no better. There's no perfect solution, but the alternative right now, this tit for tat, this purgatory, this indecision, is only going to create more bloodshed and more problems. And I think that we're ready to move on beyond that.
Now, you mentioned Hamas earlier. Are Hamas and other groups actively trying to ignite this front in Judea and Samaria while all the attention is on Iran and the north?
You know, that's a really good point, because when you see the Palestinians losing the spotlight, that is historically, that's when they start making what we say balagan, chaos. And I think it's essentially the welfare state that they are, the failed welfare state that they are, the more victimized they are perceived, the more money they're getting. This is a business for them. Mahmoud Abbas is serving his 17th or 18th year of his 4-year term, and through that period, he's become a billionaire. I mean, this is a very big industry, not just for the Palestinian Authority, but for the global peace initiatives, the NGOs around the world that are leveraging the suffering of of the people of both Israel and the Palestinians for their own financial gain. And they know how to play the game. And when they're being ignored, they know the money is not going to flow. So I think it's very dangerous, as you pointed out, that when the attention is not on them, that is when we have to really, really, keep up our guard and know that it's only a matter of time until they really need to make sure that they're on the front pages of the New York Times again.
Hmm. Now, at the same time, we're seeing reports of retaliatory attacks by Israeli extremists. How serious is this phenomenon, in your opinion, and how much is it complicating the security situation?
So, I mean, I'll tell you, it's very nuanced from my perspective. Now, I'm not justifying any actions as vigilantism. I don't purport to support or vigilantism, but I do see that law enforcement must take a more active role. In the police, by the way, a lot of this is criminal stuff. The police do not operate in Judea and Samaria unless they're giving out speeding tickets. And that's just police aren't going in on arrests for terrorist suspects. These are the army. And I think that the army also understands that they are military. They're trained military. They're not trained to police. So when you have civilians on the ground who are actualizing, again, this is my opinion, their Jewish civil liberties to live in Judea, to plant and to grow and to have families, and they're being attacked on a daily basis. Their fields are being burned. Their houses are being burned. They're being shot at, and there's no one to respond to. There's no law enforcement that is going to stop these actions. In fact, the international community actually supports it, justifies it, because the mere presence of Jews living in Judea, to them, is a human rights abuse and against international law. So we really don't have the support that we need in order to police and to stop this terror. So when these people feel that they are not being protected, this vigilantism actually historically works. Because if the Arabs see that the Jews are crazier than they are, then they end up becoming much more pacified. Again, I'm not justifying it. The police need to step up. The army needs to step up. The political leaders need to, again, like I said before, need to make a final national decision. In the interim, I don't know what I think about these people. And I really, I truly want to see coexistence in peace in the region. I'm not so sure that we have that same mindset on the other side.
Well, certainly the optics aren't great.
No, the optics are terrible because, again, you're only seeing quote-unquote settler violence. That's all you're seeing on the news. You're not seeing the reported shootings, rock throwing, burning of fields, burning of homes. You're not seeing these things on the news because, again, they're being justified. If every single time an Arab attacked a Jew was on the news, you would actually see this probably about 100 to 1. So what you're seeing in the optics is exactly that. It's the optics. It's the narrative. It's the narrative warfare that is being used against Israel and the Jewish people. And I think that for those who live in Judea and Samaria and realize that the people are generally very law-abiding citizens. I mean, in my town, we have one police officer that's probably the most boring job in the world. And that's kind of the situation we're having here. So a lot of people think that the Judea and Samaria and the settlers in West Bank were lawless and crazy violent people, but that's not the case at all. And this is the narrative, and this is what they're showing. And unfortunately, what they're showing is the truth. I mean, they're not making up videos with AI and saying, "Look what these Jews are doing." They are doing it. And again, I don't justify it, but I'll give a reason. Like I said before, they're feeling that they're not being protected as is their national right.
Well, Gedalia Plum, thank you very much for your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now that's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour, broadcasting live from Israel and the heart of the Middle East. We're here every hour on the hour with the latest breaking news, in-depth reports, and exclusive insights into the stories shaping the region and the world. I'm Sivan Raviv. Thank you very much for watching.